by and large, well. I think Intel was great. I don't have obviously visibility, as I don't think anybody does, on what's happening behind the scenes. I've noticed that people like there's Roguestar and Sargon and whatever are respectively doing a lot of organization and motivation for letter writing and a lot of sort of citizen journalism. And I think all of that's been terrific. I think you're showing the journalists up, frankly. I think that the language on the whole is temperate and accurate. I think that you're showing remarkable restraint in the face of horrible insults from the journalists that ought to be fighting your corner. So I can't really complain about very much. If I'm completely honest, and I'm going to leave this as something for you to think about, I didn't understand the response to Damien Schubert's suggestion for a industry body to sit alongside. I understand where a lot of you guys come from, and I know that the idea of leaders is completely antithetical to the anonymous psychology and all the rest of it. But when I spoke to Monday Matt about this on the radio thing I do, it became very clear to me that it was obviously a good idea, and that he was not somebody that any of you would want involved in it. But you've got to get yourself, I think that Gamergate has a really powerful, important message, and you're going to have other important, powerful messages in the future, and you need a way to get that on conference stages and to legitimize and to institutionalize a little bit, some sort of mechanism. That is why you only get an A-, because I think there's got to be some recognition that if this movement is going to have longevity and stability and real commercial clout and power, I think it's got to evolve from a sort of loose coalition of people doing, people tweeting and live streaming, into something that somebody from the outside world can visit. They understand what it is, what it wants, some of the people that are involved in it, and can phone it up and book a speaker.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it's this loose confederation, but I mean, it's based upon the. How do I put this? Like, okay. When people ask people who are in Gamergate why they're there, they get different responses. And they're going to say, what's your goal? And they're going to get different responses. I did this little questionnaire a couple of weeks ago that was basically, it was 2 questions. It's, who are you and why are you here? And then 5 questions saying, what do you want? So I got close to almost 600 emails at the end of it. And it's basically everybody from all walks of life. Who are you? What do you want? Why are you here? And I noticed that the goals, quote unquote, that they had for Gamergate were totally different, but they were somehow linked to the why are you here. You had some people who were here as the corruption in the industry aspect. You had some people here that were at the the gamers are dead articles and lambasting an entire demographic. You have some people who are here at as part of the social justice narrative that they're seeing pushed. You have people here seeing due to a victimization of a certain group, and it's gotten to the point where the goal of Gamergate is personal and independent. Of the person itself, to the person itself, not to the movement, whereas the movement itself is rather a means to that goal.
What I would say is that you lack in the gaming industry a consumer body. I think it is inevitably going to surface, and if you don't make it now, if you don't take the opportunity to create it now, somebody else will later, and it will look a lot less like what you'd want. And I think in every industry, every big established industry, you have consumer bodies. They all run along very different lines. They're all structured very differently. But what they do is advocate for consumers' interests. Now, that doesn't mean that they only fight on one subject. They fight on many fronts at once, and those priorities change over time. And the people who run that organization may be re-elected, as regularly as often as people like. But what they have in common, and what they're useful for, and what I think that this movement could do with, if I'm honest, is they have the ability to strike fear into the hearts of the people that they judge. For example, which Damien Schubert suggested, which I thought was a terrific idea, they can rate journalistic outlets. They could give Kotaku an F or a D or whatever. That speaks so powerfully. You cannot understand how powerfully that speaks to advertisers.
Yeah, it's actually it's not a bad idea. It's really really great. The thing about it is it's just a matter of timing. Because something
now
like
is the
that.
time to do it. Now is the time.
Yeah.
You are never going to have more attention or, frankly, more sympathy than you have right now. And nor are you going to have more people prepared to donate, maybe a $5 each. You get 2,000 people to donate a $5 each. You've got enough for a little war chest to, get a website sorted, get someone to brand it, all that kind of basic stuff. You're never going to have a better opportunity than now. And the point that I'll just make 2 points, then I've got to go. The first one is if you are in a position where you can rank and judge outlets, advertisers listen, and they don't just listen. They don't just make big decisions, which you see with Intel. Those Intel things happen once in a blue moon, right? It was a really big fucking deal and a huge victory, but you shouldn't expect one of those every week. What will happen will be more subtle than that. What will happen is that outlets that are rated very poorly will get lower rates from their existing advertisers, right? So, sites that are perceived to have more authority and speak to more gamers and are trusted by more gamers will get paid more for the same ads. So you won't necessarily see, Intel dropping out from one website, but what you might not necessarily know initially is that those relationships will begin to change if this organization is seen as a respectable authority and can speak for enough ordinary video gamers, right? Doesn't have to speak for everybody, but if it speaks for the majority and expresses in relatively uncontroversial terms most of the stuff that most people care about, it will have credibility. And if it has credibility, it has power. And if it has power, you can use it to punish the people who behave badly. Well, that's what you're lacking.
Oh, and I think, just to kind of close this out, and then I know you have to go, it's something I've struggled with. Listen, I don't necessarily think that it's a bad idea. I think that people were resistant to it because of who suggested it, and the kind of the timing involved in it.
Yep, I understand that.
And again, I really appreciate you coming in here. Like I said, we had a couple of questions we wanted to ask, and you were able to answer them just wonderfully. Again, I apologize if I was a drunk asshole. I wasn't expecting to pull you into this, nor was I expecting to pull Eric Kane into this. Do you want to plug anything? What your Twitter is, so people can follow you in case they're not?
No, I'm fine. But I will say two things. One is you've been an absolute delight, and thank you for having me. And the second thing is just to say, you guys have done something almost unprecedented here. I can't think of another sustained, coherent consumer revolt like this in the tech industry, in any bit of the tech industry, for years. I think it's powerful. I think it's marvelous. But you have to decide, as a movement, would be my view, and you've got to do it before Christmas, I would say. What this is going to turn into, where it's going to go, and what it's going to look like. My personal opinion is that it stays fundamentally a headless, by which I mean leaderless, not directionless, coalition of engaged, persistent, polite, well-educated consumers who advocate for the interests of gamers. But it is complemented by an organization comprised of people that, like I would say, Eric Kane types who have sympathies on both sides and are able to be. Eric Kane is a journalist, so he wouldn't be an appropriate member, but people like that who you have identified and who you respect and who you think are able to accurately convey your opinions. People who can speak to anyone and would be welcome on any conference stage, and also could advocate for gamers' interests with Nick Denton, the owner of Gawker, or with the president of EA, somebody who you trust to sit down in a room and say, right, this is what the people we represent are really worried about, and that's lacking at the moment. That's a problem.
It sounds like you're advocating for a union almost, a gamers union.
It's a consumer body. I mean, it's like Witch magazine or any of these other things. It is it is a consumer watchdog run by consumers that acts as a acts almost as a sort of journalistic. What you'll find actually is with these consumer watchdogs that they generate their own editorial. Journalists will be quite keen on publishing surveys that this body comes up with, because what you'll do is you'll do an annual ranking of publications, right? And you'll rank publications from like A to E, and that becomes a really powerful annual news event because every publication wants to know where they are on that list. And those sorts of things generate their own editorial. Other people will start to write about them. Journalists will want to make you happy, and it doesn't mean that they'll write opinions it doesn't mean that you'll alter their fundamental opinions in some cases, but it means that they will be a hell of a lot politer and more thoughtful and more considerate to other points of view, and that they will hopefully start to do their jobs better, and you will be able to express to them your pleasure or displeasure with them after a year. You will be able to write and speak and talk about what consumers aren't particularly happy with. And it's not just journalists. You will be able to do all of those things also about developers, about big game studios. You can have sort of unofficial annual awards for like the best games and all the rest of it. Take some of the power back from journalists and decide yourselves game of the year, studio of the year, and similarly, fuck up of the year, disappointment of the year. No developer, particularly the big ones, want to be, the game industry consumer body's fuck up of the year. And they will do everything possible to avoid that. At the moment, they don't have to because they've got power over the journalists. But if you have a credible organization that is able to call out big screw-ups like Mass Effect 3 and say this was unconscionably hopeless, and we're not going to let you forget about it. You're speaking to they have no power over you, like they do over the journalists. They have no ability to control what you're going to say about them. This is the great glory of what your movement has at the moment, but it needs to be codified in a way that represents a genuine reputational risk to these companies, so that they take you seriously. And that's what's missing. And that's my last word.